What happens when an Academy Award-nominated actress known for speaking her mind sits across the table from one of the most outspoken political commentators on daytime TV, and neither of them backs down? Make sure to subscribe to the Star Talks, and like and comment for more talk show coverage. So the moment starts calmly. The cameras are already rolling on The View. The audience is warm, clapping, the energy is light. Whoopi Goldberg is moderating, relaxed as always. Joy Behar is leaning back with that familiar smirk. Sunny Hostin has her notes in front of her. And seated at the end of the table, composed but alert, is Alyssa Farah Griffin. The guest of the day is Jessica Chastain. She walks out to loud applause. She smiles, waves, sits down. The first few minutes are easy. Her latest project, producing, balancing work and family. She's thoughtful, articulate. The audience loves her. Whoopi starts steering the conversation toward the themes in Jessica's new film: power, corruption, and moral responsibility. Jessica speaks carefully. I think we're living in a time, she says, hands folded on the table, where accountability matters more than ever. Not just in politics, in culture, media, everything. There's applause. Sunny nods. Joy jumps in. You've never been shy about speaking politically. Jessica smiles politely. I don't think it's about politics as much as values. And that's when Alyssa shifts in her seat. She leans slightly forward. But Jessica, don't you think sometimes Hollywood oversimplifies political issues? It's easy to say accountability, but governing is complicated. The audience gives that low, curious murmur. Jessica turns toward her. Still calm. Of course it's complicated. But that can't be an excuse for harm. Alyssa nods, but she's not backing off. Sure, but sometimes when celebrities weigh in, it becomes very black and white. And that fuels division. Joy exhales softly. Oh boy. The audience laughs nervously. Jessica's expression changes, not angry, but focused. I'm not pretending to be a policy expert, she says. But I am a citizen. And when I see policies that hurt marginalized communities, I'm going to say something. Sunny adds, that's her First Amendment right. Alyssa responds quickly. Absolutely. But it's also fair to question whether celebrity platforms amplify outrage more than solutions. Now the tension is noticeable. Whoopi lifts her hand slightly. Okay, let's keep it respectful. Jessica nods. It is respectful. I just think it's interesting that when artists speak up, we're told to stay in our lane. But when politicians speak about art or education, no one says that. There's louder applause now. Alyssa tilts her head. I'm not saying stay in your lane. I'm saying there's influence. When millions follow you, words have consequences. Jessica doesn't hesitate. Exactly. Which is why silence can also have consequences. The audience reacts, a mix of applause and a few audible sounds. Joy jumps in. That's a point. Alyssa presses. But Jessica, do you ever worry that framing complex policy issues in moral absolutes contributes to polarization? Jessica's voice is still steady, but firmer. I worry more about children being separated from families. I worry more about women losing rights. If that sounds absolute, maybe it should. The audience claps louder now. Some stand briefly. Alyssa's smile tightens slightly. But you see how that implies anyone who disagrees with you doesn't care about those things. Jessica shakes her head immediately. No, it implies that policy outcomes matter. Intentions don't erase impact. There's a pause. A real one. The kind that happens live when everyone realizes this isn't a surface-level exchange anymore. Whoopi clears her throat. All right, let's breathe for a second. But Alyssa isn't finished. I just think, she says carefully, that sometimes the rhetoric from Hollywood suggests there's only one morally acceptable viewpoint. And that alienates half the country. Jessica turns fully toward her now. I don't believe human rights are partisan. The audience erupts in applause again. Joy says under her breath, that's going to trend. Sunny nods emphatically. Human rights aren't partisan. Alyssa raises her hands slightly. No one is saying they are. But definitions of rights, and how to protect them, that's where policy debate happens. Jessica leans in slightly. And debate is healthy. But so is calling out injustice when we see it. The energy in the studio has shifted completely. What started as a promotional interview is now a direct ideological clash. Whoopi tries to lighten it. This is why we have this table. The audience laughs, tension breaking just a little. But Alyssa looks back at Jessica. Can I ask you something honestly? Jessica nods. Of course. Do you think conservatives are inherently less compassionate? There's an audible gasp from the audience. Jessica pauses. It's the first time she hesitates. She chooses her words carefully. No, she says slowly. I think systems can be less compassionate. I think policies can be less compassionate. I don't believe people wake up wanting to harm others. Alyssa studies her. Then we agree more than people think. Jessica gives a small smile. Maybe. But Joy interjects quickly. Except when it comes to actual legislation. The audience laughs again. Alyssa laughs too, but there's tension behind it. Legislation requires compromise. Jessica responds immediately. Compromise shouldn't mean someone else's rights are negotiable. The applause is loud now. Whoopi leans back. All right, this is getting good. Sunny adds, it already is. Jessica turns back to the group. I don't enjoy confrontation, she says. But I do believe artists have always been part of social movements. That's not new. Alyssa nods slightly. True, but movements can also silence dissent within their own ranks. Jessica raises an eyebrow. And governments can silence dissent too. Another wave of reactions from the audience. The producers clearly aren't cutting to commercial yet. The conversation is too compelling. Alyssa looks directly at Jessica. I just think there's a way to advocate without painting one side as villains. Jessica answers calmly. If policies cause harm, pointing that out isn't villainizing. It's accountability. And that's where the first real crack in the polite tone appears. Alyssa's voice sharpens just a touch. Accountability goes both ways. Jessica doesn't look away. I agree. There's silence again. Not awkward, charged. Whoopi glances at the camera. We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, apparently we're still talking. The audience laughs loudly as the cameras fade to commercial. But the looks exchanged at that table suggest this conversation is far from over. The cameras come back from commercial and you can feel it instantly. The air is heavier. The applause is still there, but it's sharper now, more aware. Everyone knows this isn't just a routine celebrity segment anymore. Whoopi leans forward slightly. We're back with Jessica Chastain, and we're in the middle of what I think is a very honest conversation. Jessica nods, composed. Alyssa adjusts her papers, but she doesn't look down at them. She's focused. Whoopi continues. Before the break, we were talking about advocacy, accountability, and whether public figures contribute to division or clarity. Joy jumps in, or both. Light laughter from the audience. Alyssa looks at Jessica. I want to clarify something. I'm not questioning your sincerity. I believe you care deeply. My concern is about tone. When influential voices say certain policies are immoral, it leaves little room for debate. Jessica responds quickly, but calmly. But if something violates someone's dignity, shouldn't it be called immoral? Sunny nods immediately. Language matters. Alyssa keeps her posture upright. It does. And that's exactly why I'm saying we need to be careful. Because when everything becomes framed as a moral crisis, it escalates. Jessica folds her hands again. Some things are moral crises. There's scattered applause. Joy looks between them. Well, that's the show today. The audience laughs, but it's nervous. Alyssa leans in slightly. Jessica, let's take a specific example. When you talk about women's rights, and I agree they matter, there are millions of Americans who believe they are protecting life. They don't see themselves as oppressors. The audience quiets down significantly. Jessica takes a breath. I understand that people hold sincere beliefs. But when those beliefs result in someone losing autonomy over their body, the impact is real. It's not abstract. Sunny adds, policy affects real people. Alyssa turns towards Sunny briefly. Of course it does. But democracy requires negotiation. We can't just declare the other side morally bankrupt. Jessica shakes her head. I'm not calling voters morally bankrupt. I'm calling certain outcomes harmful. Joy interjects. That's an important distinction. Alyssa nods slowly. But online, in interviews, in headlines, those nuances get lost. It becomes good versus evil. Jessica looks directly at her. I can't control how headlines frame things. I can control what I say. The audience murmurs approval. Whoopi steps in gently. Let's talk about responsibility. Both of you are talking about influence. Jessica picks that up. Exactly. Influence means I can't pretend not to see injustice. Alyssa responds immediately. And influence means being aware that your words can shut down conversation. Jessica tilts her head slightly. Do you feel shut down right now? The audience reacts, a few audible "oh" sounds. Alyssa doesn't flinch. No, I'm sitting here debating you. But many people watching at home may feel dismissed when Hollywood elites imply they are on the wrong side of history. Jessica's expression tightens just a little. I grew up in a working-class family. I'm not an elite. Applause. Alyssa nods. I'm not attacking your background. I'm talking about cultural power. Sunny leans forward. Cultural power isn't inherently negative. Alyssa replies, no, but it's influential. And when it consistently leans one direction politically, people feel unheard. Jessica responds, voice steady but firmer now. Maybe they feel unheard because their leaders aren't delivering solutions. The audience reacts again, louder this time. Joy raises her eyebrows. Okay. Alyssa exhales slowly. See, that's what I mean. That assumes one party has all the answers. Jessica shakes her head. No party has all the answers. But when data shows harm, we shouldn't ignore it to avoid offending someone. Whoopi interjects, her tone calm but authoritative. We're not going to solve America at this table. Light laughter breaks the tension slightly. But Alyssa presses. Jessica, do you think there's ever a point where celebrity activism becomes performative? There's another murmur from the audience. Jessica answers without hesitation. Sure, there's performative activism everywhere, in Hollywood and in politics. Alyssa nods. So how do you ensure yours isn't? Jessica leans back slightly. By doing the work privately too. By donating, organizing, listening. Not just tweeting. Applause again. Sunny smiles. That's fair. Alyssa raises an eyebrow. And do you listen to people who disagree with you? Jessica pauses briefly. Yes, I'm listening right now. The audience responds with a mix of laughter and clapping. Alyssa gives a small smile. Touché. But then she continues. Here's where I struggle. When celebrities say history will judge, it feels like there's no room for honest disagreement. Jessica responds more intensely now. History does judge. It always has. Joy nods slowly. She's not wrong. Alyssa turns slightly toward Joy. But who writes that history? Academia? Media? Hollywood? Sunny jumps in. Facts write history. Alyssa counters. Interpretations write history. Jessica speaks again, her tone sharper than before. Some things aren't open to interpretation. Civil rights weren't ambiguous. The audience applauds loudly. Alyssa answers carefully. And yet there were people at the time who believed they were defending tradition. Jessica's eyes narrow slightly. And they were wrong. The audience reacts strongly, clapping, a few cheers. Whoopi raises her hand again. All right, we're getting into deep water. But the conversation doesn't slow. Alyssa looks at Jessica. My concern is about labeling today's debates as equivalent to past injustices. That escalates rhetoric. Jessica's voice remains steady but intense. If patterns repeat, we have to call them out. Alyssa responds, or we risk inflaming fear. Jessica counters immediately. Silence inflames harm. There's a brief overlap where both start to speak at once. Whoopi steps in firmly. One at a time. The audience laughs nervously. Jessica gestures politely. Go ahead. Alyssa continues. I believe in debate. I believe in gradual progress. I don't believe in demonization. Jessica nods slowly. I don't believe in gradual rights. That line lands hard. The audience erupts in applause, louder than before. Joy leans back in her chair. Well, Sunny looks impressed. That's a statement. Alyssa keeps her composure, but her jaw tightens slightly. Rights also come with legal complexities. Jessica responds quickly. Legal complexity shouldn't be an excuse for delay. The tension is undeniable now. Both women are speaking clearly, firmly, but neither is shouting. It's controlled, which somehow makes it more intense. Whoopi glances toward the producers off camera. They clearly know this moment is going viral. Alyssa says, you know, I respect your passion. I just don't want viewers to feel like if they don't align with Hollywood's consensus, they are morally inferior. Jessica looks directly at her. I don't think morality belongs to any party. But I do think empathy should be universal. The audience applauds again. Alyssa responds, empathy also means understanding why people fear rapid change. Jessica replies, and justice means not delaying change because of fear. There's that charged silence again. Joy breaks it. I need popcorn. The audience laughs loudly, grateful for the break. But the expressions at the table show this is far from resolved. Both Jessica and Alyssa are calm, but neither is retreating. Whoopi sighs lightly, half amused, half serious. This is what happens when you bring strong women to the table. Applause fills the studio again. And as the segment continues, you can feel it. The conversation is no longer about one film or one policy. It's about influence, power, responsibility, and neither side is ready to give ground. When the conversation continues, it's clear this is no longer just an exchange of viewpoints. It's a test of how far each woman is willing to go without crossing the line. Whoopi looks between them. All right, let's reset for a second, because this is clearly resonating with people. The audience claps lightly. Jessica sits upright, hands clasped together. Alyssa mirrors her posture now, both leaning slightly forward, not aggressive, but fully engaged. Sunny speaks first this time. Jessica, do you ever feel pressure in Hollywood to align with a certain political stance? Jessica exhales softly. There's pressure everywhere. In Hollywood. In politics. In media. The difference is whether you're willing to stand by what you believe when it's inconvenient. Alyssa nods. But is it inconvenient in Hollywood? Or is it actually safer to take progressive positions? There's a ripple through the audience, a mix of agreement and discomfort. Jessica answers carefully. It depends who you ask. There are absolutely conservative actors who feel isolated. I'm aware of that. Joy raises an eyebrow. That's generous. Jessica continues. But I don't think speaking about human dignity is a partisan act. Alyssa responds quickly. It becomes partisan when policies are attached. Jessica turns toward her. Policies affect dignity. Alyssa says, and policies require negotiation. Jessica's voice tightens slightly. Negotiation shouldn't dilute fundamental rights. The audience applauds again, not as explosively as before, but steadily. Whoopi steps in. Here's the thing. You're both arguing about strategy, not about whether people deserve rights. Alyssa nods. Correct. Jessica nods too. Yes. For a moment, it feels like common ground. The audience relaxes slightly. But then Alyssa adds, the disagreement is about how we get there and whether framing half the country as morally wrong helps or hurts that path. Jessica responds immediately. I'm not framing half the country as morally wrong. Alyssa gently pushes, but the rhetoric often implies that. Jessica's tone shifts, still controlled, but more emotional. When I speak about policies harming women or LGBTQ communities, I'm not thinking about party lines. I'm thinking about individuals. Sunny nods firmly. Impact matters. Alyssa turns to Sunny briefly. Intent matters too. Jessica interjects. Intent without accountability is meaningless. There's a sharp from the audience. Joy leans forward. Okay, that's a line. Alyssa looks at Jessica steadily. So if someone genuinely believes they are protecting life, but you see harm in the outcome, do you think they are morally accountable? Jessica pauses. It's the longest pause she's taken so far. I think, she says slowly, that we're all responsible for examining the consequences of our beliefs. The audience claps softly. Alyssa responds, that's fair. But are you willing to examine unintended consequences of progressive policies too? Jessica nods. Absolutely. Alyssa presses, even when it challenges your own side. Jessica doesn't hesitate. Yes. There's a subtle shift. The tone is less combative for a brief moment. Whoopi smiles slightly. Look at that. Progress. Laughter from the audience. But then Alyssa adds, because sometimes it feels like Hollywood activism doesn't tolerate internal criticism. Jessica leans in. That's not my experience. Alyssa replies, it's the experience of some. Jessica counters, then we should make room for that dialogue, not silence advocacy altogether. The audience reacts positively. Joy jumps in. Nobody's silencing you today. The crowd laughs. Alyssa smiles slightly but continues. No, but culturally, there are consequences. People lose jobs over tweets. Jessica responds quickly, and people lose rights over legislation. The audience erupts again, louder this time. Whoopi lifts her hand again. Okay. But the temperature is rising. Alyssa says, her voice firmer now, you keep equating disagreement with oppression. Jessica shakes her head. No, I'm equating specific policies with oppression. Alyssa replies, from your perspective. Jessica answers sharply, from lived experiences of affected communities. There's a collective reaction from the audience, some applause, some murmurs. Sunny leans in. Data supports that certain groups are disproportionately affected. Alyssa responds, and data can be interpreted in multiple ways. Jessica's eyebrows lift slightly. Not when outcomes are measurable. Alyssa looks directly at her. Outcomes depend on variables. Jessica responds immediately. Variables don't erase suffering. The tension is palpable now. No one is smiling. Joy looks between them. This is why Thanksgiving is exhausting. Laughter breaks out briefly. But Alyssa continues. Here's my concern. When influential figures say there's no debate, it shuts down persuasion. And persuasion is how democracies function. Jessica replies, persuasion shouldn't require people to sacrifice their rights while waiting. Alyssa's voice sharpens slightly. No one is asking for sacrifice. We're asking for conversation. Jessica's tone matches hers now, still measured, but stronger. Conversation without action can be a stalling tactic. There's an audible gasp from someone in the audience. Whoopi leans forward, serious now. All right, let's not assign motives. Jessica nods immediately. Fair. Alyssa nods too. Agreed. There's a brief moment where both women visibly rein themselves in. Sunny steps in. I think what's powerful here is that this is what democracy looks like, disagreement without shouting. The audience applauds that. Jessica softens slightly. I respect that we're having this discussion. Alyssa responds, I do too. But then Jessica adds, I just don't think neutrality is an option when harm is visible. Alyssa replies, and I don't think labeling policy disagreements as harm automatically moves us forward. Jessica looks at her steadily. If someone loses bodily autonomy, that's harm. Alyssa counters, if someone believes they are protecting life, they see harm in the opposite direction. The audience is split in reaction now, applause mixed with quiet murmurs. Joy looks at Whoopi. This might be the most civil argument we've had. Whoopi nods slowly, because they are actually listening. Jessica turns slightly toward Alyssa. I don't think you're malicious. Alyssa responds quietly. I don't think you are either. That line softens the room just a bit. But Jessica continues. I just think the urgency feels different depending on who you are. Alyssa nods slowly. That's probably true. For a moment, the tension dips. And then Joy asks, so where do we go from here? The audience chuckles. Jessica says, we keep talking, but we also act. Alyssa adds, and we allow space for disagreement without condemnation. Jessica looks at her, holding eye contact. As long as disagreement doesn't mean delay. There it is again, that subtle edge. Whoopi glances toward the clock. We've got a few more minutes. The energy is still charged, but it's evolved. This isn't just confrontation anymore. It's two women defending philosophies about activism and governance. And neither is fully satisfied. The audience senses it too. Because even as the conversation steadies, the core disagreement remains. Not about compassion, not about caring, but about urgency, responsibility, and who gets to define harm. And it's clear the final stretch of this discussion is going to determine how this moment is remembered. As the final minutes tick down, you can feel the producers signaling that they need to wrap. But nobody at the table wants to reduce what just happened into a neat closing sentence. Whoopi leans forward, voice calm but firm. All right, we've got about 3 minutes left. I want to give each of you a chance to say something directly to the viewers at home. The audience quiets immediately. Jessica nods, taking a breath. Alyssa folds her hands, composed. Whoopi gestures to Jessica first. Jessica looks straight into the camera. I believe deeply in empathy. And I believe empathy requires action. When I speak up, it's not because I think I'm morally superior. It's because I've listened to people whose lives are affected by policy decisions. I don't claim to have all the answers. But I do believe that when harm is visible, we have a responsibility to acknowledge it. Applause fills the studio, steady, supportive. She turns slightly toward Alyssa. And I appreciate that we can disagree without dehumanizing each other. There's a softer round of applause. Whoopi nods and looks to Alyssa. Your turn. Alyssa nods, her tone controlled but sincere. I respect Jessica's passion. I truly do. My message to viewers is this. Disagreement does not equal cruelty. In a democracy, we are going to have different interpretations of policy, data, morality. And if we start assuming that people who disagree with us are heartless, we lose the ability to persuade, and persuasion is essential. Some audience members clap. Others stay quiet. It's mixed, which says a lot. Jessica listens closely. No interruption. Alyssa continues, I want a country where strong voices can advocate fiercely, but also make room for those who see solutions differently. Sunny jumps in gently, but solutions still have consequences. Alyssa nods. They do. On all sides. Joy leans back. This might be the calmest intense argument we've ever had. The audience laughs, tension finally breaking. Whoopi smiles slightly. That's because nobody flipped a table. More laughter. But then Jessica adds one last thought. I don't think asking for rights to be protected is radical. Alyssa responds carefully. And I don't think asking for debate is obstruction. The audience reacts again. Applause split between both statements. Whoopi raises her hand. And that, folks, is why we sit at this table. The applause swells as the show transitions toward its closing credits. Jessica and Alyssa exchange a brief handshake. It's polite, professional, not overly warm, but genuine. The camera pulls back as Whoopi thanks Jessica for joining. The credits roll. The audience stands. But that's not where the story ends. Backstage, according to staff who later spoke about the moment, the conversation didn't erupt into hostility. There were no shouting matches. No dramatic walk-offs. Jessica spoke briefly with Sunny and Joy, then approached Alyssa again. They talked quietly for a few minutes. No cameras. No applause. Just conversation. One producer later described it as intense but respectful. By the time the episode aired on the West Coast, clips were already circulating online. Within an hour, social media platforms were flooded. Some viewers praised Jessica Chastain for standing firm, calling her clear, principled, and unapologetic. Others applauded Alyssa Farah Griffin for pushing back, calling her measured, necessary, and brave for speaking in that room. Clips of specific lines began trending, especially I don't believe in gradual rights and disagreement does not equal cruelty. Comment sections were divided. Some accused Jessica of oversimplifying complex policy issues. Others accused Alyssa of minimizing urgency. Political commentators on both sides dissected every facial expression, every pause, every interruption. Cable news segments replayed the exchange. Online articles debated who won. But what stood out most wasn't shouting. It wasn't chaos. It was the tension of two intelligent women refusing to reduce their convictions for comfort, and refusing to insult each other in the process. By that evening, hashtags related to Jessica Chastain and Alyssa Farah Griffin were trending. Even former hosts of The View weighed in online, praising the show for allowing real debate without cutting to commercial too quickly. Viewers who normally avoid political talk shows admitted they watched the full segment. Media analysts pointed out something interesting the next day. Neither woman raised her voice. Neither resorted to personal attacks. The intensity came from conviction, not volume. And that's why the moment resonated. Because in a media environment where debates often devolve into shouting, this felt different. It felt uncomfortable, but honest. The next episode of the show briefly referenced the online reaction. Whoopi mentioned that the segment sparked conversation across the country. Joy joked that she needed hazard pay. Sunny emphasized the importance of continued dialogue. Alyssa acknowledged that disagreement is part of the job. Jessica, meanwhile, addressed the moment in a later interview, saying she believes passionate disagreement can coexist with mutual respect. Neither backed down from their core beliefs. Neither apologized for speaking. And that's what keeps the debate alive. Moments like this don't end when the credits roll. They live online. They become discussion threads at dinner tables. They spark think pieces. They shift perception, even slightly. So now it's your turn. Was Jessica right to frame urgency the way she did? Was Alyssa right to push back on tone and rhetoric? Did the debate move the conversation forward, or deepen the divide? Share your opinion in the comments and subscribe to the Star Talks for more real talk show stories.